Hey guys, welcome back. Today we have a really special guest with us. So let me just hand over the mic to her and let's start. So, hi Millie, could you please tell us about yourselves?
Hi, my name is Millie Florence, and I am the teen author of books for middle graders. I published my first book, Honey Butter, when I was 13 years old, and my second book, Lydia Green of Mulberry Glen, when I was 15, and I am currently working on my third book.
That's amazing.
Thank you. I run a YouTube channel and a website and an Instagram page for readers and writers, and I'm super happy to be on this podcast with you.
Even I'm really happy to talk to you. So, what made you want to start writing and not just reading?
Yeah, so I always tell people I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't love to write. Literally, for as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with storytelling. Some of my earliest memories are me laying under the covers at night when I was like 3 years old, whispering stories to myself and I was supposed to be going to sleep. And before I could even type on my own, my parents would write down my stories for me as I dictated them aloud. So to be honest, I don't entirely know what made me want to write. It's just sort of been something that's ingrained in me. And for as long as I can remember, I've loved writing and storytelling.
Wow, that's amazing. So, you love to write from childhood.
Yep.
So, what things... Oh, okay. So,
no,
what things...
Go ahead.
What things have you read that have especially helped your writing?
That have helped my writing?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some of my favorite fiction books, so I feel like you have to break this up into two categories, fiction and nonfiction, right? So, I would say I love Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, both famous British writers who I like a lot. And I also have some influences from J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, so a lot of the classics that a lot of people have heard about. Specifically, when I was younger, I remember I listened to 3 books on audiobook, like on repeat all the time. So those definitely affected my writing, and those were A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. So those were sort of my childhood writing inspirations. And then more recently, I discovered The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart, and that has become one of my favorite books. It's a lesser known middle grade adventure story, and I just think it has excellent writing. So that's the fiction side of things, books that have helped me become a better writer. And then there's the nonfiction side of things, which is a bit of a shorter list, but I would definitely mention in there Spilling Ink, a young writer's guidebook by Anne Mazer and Ellen Potter. It's just basically a book about how to be a writer for young people, and I got that on my 12th or 13th birthday maybe, and that was one of my first ever nonfiction books about writing that I read, and it was really good, and I highly recommend it to any young writer. More recently, one of my favorites has been Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, which is just a lovely, very short little book that busts a lot of the myths about becoming a professional creative.
That's amazing. I love the way you've listed out all the books you like, from fiction to non-fiction. So all these books which you have read, out of these, if you had to rank them from 1 to 5, which one would you say first?
Which is the best out of all the books I mentioned?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can really pick one of those. I think they've all helped me in completely different categories of writing. So I don't think I can really say that one is the best. I think they're all helpful. But if I was speaking directly to young writers and what's the one book out of all those that I think they should read, I would say Spilling Ink by Anne Mazer and Ellen Potter, because I think that's just an excellent first book on writing for any avid young writer.
That's amazing. So what was the hardest thing about writing for you?
The hardest thing about writing? Well, honestly, I think that is the sort of thing that changes as you write. The hardest thing when you start out as a writer is not the hardest thing when you're a more mature writer. So I don't think that my hardest thing has stayed the same over the years. I can remember many different hardest things. And sometimes they become difficult again, and sometimes they're easier. So it depends, obviously, just as a writer, you grow, and what's easy or hard for you changes. But also, it depends on the book that I'm writing. So every book that I've written has its own completely different challenges. Sometimes it's a character, sometimes it's a scene, and that tends to be specific to the book. But so I don't know if I can really point to one hardest thing. Maybe like, gosh, I don't know. Again, it just depends so much on the book. Like right now, one of the things I'm struggling with the book that I'm working on is integrating exposition. So the information that your readers need to know to follow the plot, and it can be a bit boring if you just dump it on them all at once. I'm sure you've heard the term like exposition dump or info dump. Yeah, that's something I'm working on with the book I'm writing right now. But in past books, it's been different things. So
yeah. So do you feel like it was harder for you to get attention as a young author?
I actually don't think so, no. I actually think it was easier for me as a young author because there are, especially with self-publishing and indie publishing nowadays, there are so many people out there writing and publishing books, and being young actually gives you kind of an edge because it's more impressive that you published a book when you were young, or at least many people see it that way. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see it more as how many years you spent writing. So for me, I've spent like 7-10 years writing, so it's not really more impressive than if a 20-year-old started writing when they were 20 and then published a book when they were 30. I just started writing earlier, but in a lot of people's minds it's more impressive, so they're more likely to be like, oh, this person published a book when they were 13, that's really cool. You don't see many people who publish a book when they're 13, and they're more likely to check it out.
So you are saying that age is not a factor when writing, because writing is all about creativity, not about your age, not about anything related to your age, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, to a certain extent, goodness, I can't talk. To a certain extent, there's some of that. Like, for example, I've never written romance books, and I probably won't until after I get married, because I don't know anything about romance personally. But some people can write that even when they haven't been in a romantic relationship. But where are they going with this? So like, when you're 5, you probably couldn't publish a book because it takes the ingenuity and the research. So I would say that the actual writing part doesn't matter about age. It just matters about experience. It matters about your writing age, how many years you've spent writing and really working on it. One of the things I said on my YouTube channel before is that the formula for becoming a good writer is time plus effort plus consistency equals success. And it doesn't matter what age you are. If you've been doing those things for long enough, then it shouldn't matter. Again, that said, writing, it doesn't matter. When it comes to publishing, it does matter a little bit, because you're going to have to, if you're going to do this on your own, if you're going to self-publish especially, but traditional publishing too, you have to have the entrepreneurial spirit to get out there and do your research and search the internet and watch YouTube videos and read articles and file taxes and stuff. So there is a little bit of an element of that, where if you're much younger than 13, that could be really, really difficult. But the art part of it, you're absolutely right. It doesn't really matter about your age.
So I love the way you are always motivated. I've seen all your YouTube videos and all your things you posted on your website. I just love the way you write. So I wanted to keep that up. And I also wanted to ask you, how do you balance your writing and schoolwork and a social life?
This is the eternal question among teen writers. How do you balance all the things? So for me, I always feel a bit silly giving this answer, because obviously it doesn't apply to everyone. It's a bit more specific to my case, but I am homeschooled, so that helps a lot. I can literally decide when I do my schoolwork and when I can structure my day exactly as I want to. Homeschooling has given me the freedom to do that. So for me, it's a bit simpler than it is for other people. I'll just choose to get all my schoolwork done before lunch, and then after lunch, I do writing and marketing and stuff. But that is not to say that it isn't a struggle sometimes, and that there are days when I don't feel as motivated, and I will fall behind on my schoolwork and have to spend a day catching up, or I don't write for a week because I'm not feeling good about it. And so it takes a lot of self-control. In some ways, more self-control when you're homeschooled, because you can do whatever you want with your day. So there's always the temptation to spend the whole day watching YouTube. But in general, like, that's my answer. That's my answer for me. But what I would say to teen authors who do go to school and don't have as much control over their time, that well, first of all, look at your Instagram history, at your screen time history. How do you manage to spend hours and hours and hours a week on social media if your schedule is so packed, is as packed as you feel like it? Well, because social media is fun and you make time for it. In the minutes between things, you get on there and you scroll through Instagram. If you replaced some of those minutes with even just thinking about writing, setting aside time to think about your project and work through some of the problems in your brain, you would spend those hours writing. And obviously there are points when you do need uninterrupted few hours to write 2,000 words, and those can be hard to find. But I do think that if you enjoy writing and you make time for it, it's not about finding the time, it's about making the time. If you make time for it, then that's how you can achieve more balance.
Yeah, I love the way you are telling that, because I think that's a problem which many people face when it comes to time. They don't have enough time, and in reality they're like not using their time wisely. For example, me, I do use it wisely at times, but like sometimes it just gets messed up, and when I can write, I don't get the chance to write because I don't use the time wisely sometimes.
Yeah. Time is valuable, and it's a skill to learn.
Sometimes people just forget about writing, and then they say that the day does not have enough hours to write.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen many websites, many YouTube channels which say that they have taken a lot of, since they have their own YouTube channel, their own website, and then they have their own school if they're a teen author, they have so many things to do that they feel that there's not enough hours in the day to complete other stuff.
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to what you care about, because you make time for the things you care about. And if writing is one of your priorities, then you'll make time for it. But if one of the things my mom always says, which I totally agree with, is when you choose to do something, you're choosing not to do something else.
Yeah. Okay, so now I wanted to ask you a few things about your website.
Yeah, sure.
So on your website, it says that you published your first book, Honey Butter. So could you tell us more about your book?
Yeah, sure. So Honey Butter was my first book, my debut novel. I published it when I was 13 years old. And it is a contemporary middle grade novel about a 7-year-old girl named Jamie Johnson, who is obsessed with collecting paint cards, like the little paint sample strips that you get at hardware stores and paint stores. And then one day, a mysterious older girl moves into the house beside hers, and suddenly Jamie, who used to find the world very boring and humdrum, her eyes are opened to the adventures of everyday life. So that's Honey Butter. It was quite a journey publishing that book. I think the first book, the writing of it is not necessarily the hardest, but the publishing of your first book is always the hardest.
So since you did your publishing self-published, you self-published, does that mean you're an indie author?
Yes. So indie author is an abbreviation for independent author, and it means you're not linked to a larger publishing house. It can also like be applied to some authors who are part of really small publishing houses. But yes, it also means self-published authors. So self-published author, indie author, independent author, they're all sort of the same thing.
So was it hard to like get a large audience reading your books since you could not get your book like promoted by agents or publishers?
Yeah, honestly, it's very difficult. Marketing is the term that you use in the book world. Marketing is very difficult, but and I guess in some ways it would be easier for a traditionally published author, but in a lot of ways it's no more like it's not harder to market a book because you're self-published than it would be because you're traditionally published. The main thing when you're traditionally published is that you have a stamp of approval from an official company, and that makes people more likely to think your book is quality and buy your book. So you do have that going for you when you're published by a traditional publishing company. But in a lot of large publishing companies, and I've heard this directly from people who have worked with the Big Five, Penguin and HarperCollins, you don't get any help marketing, like none at all, because they are such a big company. They don't have time for most of their authors, and the authors have to do their own marketing. Now that's a little bit different with like mid-sized publishing houses and smaller publishing houses. They'll work a bit more closely with their authors, which I think is a great thing. But when you're comparing like self-published authors to great big published by the traditional Big Five published authors, the marketing experience is not too different. Now, that's not to say that you won't sell more books if you're published by one of the Big Five. Obviously, you have their stamp of approval. People automatically know that your book is quality or think that your book is quality. And you don't have that going for you as a self-published author, but the actual marketing techniques are no different.
Oh, so basically the marketing techniques are similar for each of them, but just that the readers think that your book will obviously be good if like a publisher stamps their approval on it.
Yes, exactly.
But it's not like the self-published authors do not get readers, because I've read many self-published, I'm not sure whether you know this, I've not read her books, but I've seen her YouTube channel. Her name is Sarah Sultan.
Oh, I've not heard of her, no.
Yeah, so her is more of on the YA side, so I've not read that yet. So yeah, her one in her channel, she also talks about writing tips, editing tips, and I really like the way, like her way of telling was also kind of like your way. I like could understand the ways everyone had their views on editing, writing. She also uses this technique called the Pomodoro technique.
Oh yes, I use that.
Yeah, so when I heard of that, I had so many questions rising up. So should I ask you a few?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so what exactly is this Pomodoro technique?
Okay, so first, a little disclaimer. I'm no expert on the Pomodoro techniques. I don't know all the science behind it, but I do use it, so I can give you a little info. Basically, the Pomodoro technique is a studying technique. It was developed as a studying technique by some scientists who like track the brain. And the idea is you set a timer for a set amount of time. Traditionally, it's 25 minutes. Apparently, that works best for the human brain. You set a timer for 25 minutes, and you work and stay completely focused on your work for those 25 minutes. Once that 25 minutes is up, you give yourself a 5-minute break. Ideally, you stand up, walk around, look away from your computer, and give your brain a breather. After that 5 minutes is up, you go for another 25 minutes, then break for another 5 minutes. And after an hour of doing that, you break for 30 minutes. So that's the basics.
So that can be used in anything which involves something which your brain, like something which like your brain does not want to do, but you like have to do it in order to do something good.
Yeah, essentially. And I wouldn't say that like I don't want to write, but you sometimes need that extra little motivation to sit down and focus. Your brain needs to snap into focus mode, and that tends to get mine too.
So you told me that you have written 2 books so far, third one you're working on, right? So what is your second book about?
Well, I cannot answer that entirely. There's still a lot of it that I have to keep secret. but I am releasing the title of it on March 1st. I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but if it's after March 1st, then I will have released the title, and you can look at that on my blog or my Instagram or my YouTube. So I'm releasing the title, and then I'm going to do a Q&A video on my YouTube channel about what's going on with it. But what can I say here? Well, it's another middle grade fantasy novel, and it is much better than anything I've ever written before, just because I'm growing as the writer, so I'm really pleased with it. And it is the first complete novel that I've ever written from a boy's perspective. So that's been interesting, but I think that's all I can say here.
Oh, so basically your second one is not published yet. It is written but not published yet.
My second one?
Yeah.
Well, Lydia Green of Mulberry Glen. I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the book I'm working on right now.
No, I was talking about the second one.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah, Lydia Green of Mulberry Glen is published. I can talk about that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I published Lydia Green of Mulberry Glen when I was 15, so March 2019, and it is a middle grade fantasy novel about a girl named Lydia Green who lives in a magical fantasy world known as the Valley Lands, and she lives in a lovely little sort of magical, timeless part of this world called Mulberry Glen, where she is very happy, until one day she hears about a mysterious force known as the Darkness, which dwells within the evil forest Tenebrae. But not only does it dwell in Tenebrae, as she soon comes to realize, it dwells within her own head as well, and she goes on a journey to fight this darkness and get it out of her head and save a couple of her friends / adopted family who have been tricked by the darkness.
Wow. I love the way you have all of these books, their plot. I've not read them yet, but I'm going to be reading them as soon as I get the time. They sound amazing.
Thank you so much.
My full list, I have this thing. It's the next book I read kind of chit thing. So I shake it, and then whatever book comes out of this, I read that.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, I love that. You've got
because
lots of
I like to read a lot of varieties of books. So I just shake it and then read whatever comes out.
That's great.
So I probably should add the books which you wrote also into it, because I really would love to read that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just check whether there's anything else I would like to say. So I guess this is it. Do you want to add anything, or do you want to say anything else, a last minute thing you want to say to the audience?
Yeah, well, I would just say that if they want to see more from me, they can check out my YouTube channel. The channel name is Millie Florence on YouTube. That's MILLIEFLORENCE. And they can also find me on my website at millieflorence.com. Same spelling as last time, just add the .com at the end. Those are my two main platforms, is my website and my YouTube channel. So they can check me out there. And yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I had a great time talking to you.
Yeah, I had a great time talking to you too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. And all the best for your upcoming book. I hope it has a great release.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
So guys, I hope you learned something new and enjoyed the episode. And I hope to see you all guys next time. Bye guys.